I have ideas, which, due to my many talents, 99% of which will never see the light of day. So instead of spending like 3 years trying and failing to make something, I'll just make a video about it. Here is my idea for a cool Resident Evil spin-off. To walk you through my general ideas and all the little things I've come up with, I'll take you through a normal run of the game. The game begins with a cutscene showing Chris, Jill, Barry, and Wesker running into the Spencer Mansion. Yes, the first game one. Once inside, you and up to 3 friends, or bots, have a choice between the 4 characters. Each starts with the same inventory: a Beretta handgun, a first aid spray, 2 magazines, and 3 empty slots. Yeah, that's right, I stole Jill's 2 extra slots. What are you gonna do? Call the cops? Also, no knife, because we're running off RE5 rules where the base knife is free. That means the choice between the characters is between their skills: combat and monetary. Chris has bulky brawler, where every time an opponent is hit with a melee attack of his, they always play the stumble animation. And his monetary skill is that he gets 500 points when rescuing an ally from a grapple. Jill's skills are Valentine, where she rolls farther than everyone else and gets way more iframes than them, and her monetary skill is Pickpocket, giving her points every time she melees an opponent from behind. Barry has Speedloader, which means that when reloading a gun from empty, he reloads at 200% the normal reload amount. A minor boost when wielding magazine guns, but a major boon when using single action loaders. And he gains extra points every time he kills an enemy based on the tier of weapon he's wielding. So for the 3 tiers, he gets 10, 20, or 30 points per kill. Wesker has Search and Shot, giving him a 10% damage boost when hitting opponents' weak spots, or headshots, and for him, all prices are 10% reduced. Once everyone has a player attached to them, or a bot, the first round begins. The controls depend on what you set up during the setup phase, either classic or traditional. Classic is fixed camera angles and tank controls, with the rolling mechanic kind of working like it did in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, where instead of really rolling, you're more so evading attacks around the enemy. And then in traditional, it's over-the-shoulder third person, with rolls working how they did in Resident Evil 3, where you press a button and roll in that direction. Zombies begin coming in through the doors and windows, and you have to fight them off. Each kill has a chance to drop ammo, money, or a throwable, with the round ending with a round boss, that being something like the 3 dogs that chased them into the building earlier. Once it's down, the one door the undead weren't pouring through, that being the armor door right here, opens up, and the merchant from RE4 steps out. Here, you can buy new guns, more ammo, healing supplies, and upgraded melee weapons, but those do take up a slot. Once you're all kitted out, or 1 minute or so has passed, the merchant retreats, and the next wave of the undead begin funneling in. As the characters take damage, it uses RE2's health mechanics, where while at fine, they're acting normal, in caution they hold their stomach and are a little slower, and in danger, they're limping and in serious need of health. Health recovery comes in 2 forms: herbs, which can be combined and dropped by enemies, or bought, but that health is temporary unless you make a brown herb mixture by combining red, green, and blue. Permanent health comes in the form of first aid sprays, recovering a good chunk of health instead of all of it. However, this health is permanent. Death is not the end for our heroes, no. When they lose that last chunk of life, they're dropped to the ground and are put into the dying status. While dying, they have about 20 seconds left until they bleed out on the floor, but they're not out of the fight yet. Regardless of mode, they can crawl around, moving just a bit at a time, although that increases their blood loss per second, and if they're completely still, they can aim and shoot with a small gun, including pistols or knives, albeit much slower than they could while standing up. There are only 2 ways to save them, that being an ally picking them up, recovering 1 HP and giving them a bit of temporary health and a few seconds of immunity, or by having the downed character using an emergency shot, a very expensive item that can be bought from the store and takes up 1 slot per 1 item that picks you up whenever you go down, but only gives temporary health when you get up, so you better heal or else you'll be going down again. Since this is kind of just ripping off Left 4 Dead's down mechanic, it goes off that game's rule as well, where when you're picked down, go down, and picked up again without getting real healing, then your screen will be gray, and going down will lead to an instant death. If you do die, either from not getting picked up or by going down 3 times, then you're dead, and will only be brought back at the end of the round with the merchant. All of your items are lost, however, you and you alone can loot 1 item off your corpse that's randomly selected. Could be a gun, ammo, a healing item, or something else you may have had on you at the time. At the end of round 5, they come face to face with the first real boss, Yawn. He crashes through the ceiling and comes face to face with our heroes, biting and thrashing about, potentially even swallowing them whole if they're in danger. Once they deal enough damage, Yawn retreats, and a new path opens, thus beginning the transition level, where all 4 players must run through the mansion, through the art room, the L passageway, the winding path, the back passage, the covered passage, the storeroom, the courtyard gardens, the water gate, the falls, the guardhouse gate, the guardhouse entry, the central corridor, then finally ending up in the beehive passage. From here, the game continues as normal. More zombies, new enemies, and enemies using more dangerous attacks. Most enemies have 2 to 3 attacks and pose unique threats. Zombies, for instance, if they take you down with a grapple, then they'll be biting on you whenever you're downed, so you can't shoot, and you're gonna bleed out faster than normal, requiring someone to shoot it off you. Kind of like a hunter from Left 4 Dead. Zombie dogs are incredibly evasive and can kick you instead of bite you, meaning you stumble instead of, reacting to the bite. This can potentially knock you into other attacks, meaning dogs should be dealt with immediately in order to prevent combos. One of the things you can buy in the shop is weapon attachments. These includes things you'd expect, such as extended magazines, scopes, as well as other items, like silencers to increase your crit rate, threaded barrels to increase bullet damage, custom parts to increase fire rate, parts to increase or decrease spread depending on whichever you'd prefer, and lighter parts to reduce the larger guns from taking up 2 blocks down to just 1. But not every gun has access to every attachment. For instance, the Beretta and H&K have the extended magazine attachment, but that's the only similarity, since the Beretta has a white trim, allowing it to look like the standard gun from Resident Evil's advanced mode, while the H&K has a stock to reduce weapon shake. After fighting in the guardhouse, the party is soon attacked by Plant 42, and the party has to fight them off either by buying fire ammunition, creating toxins in the chemical lab, or just good old-fashioned firepower. Once it's dead, it's time for another transition stage, as the party runs back the way they came. But when they reach the back passage, they realize that the path forward has been completely blocked by a collapsed ceiling. So instead, they need to run into the east stairway. And this long hallway is where they're forced to hold out for the time being, facing off opponents from the first and second floor. However, while the doors to the C passageway and small library stay closed, they'll soon gain access to the deer room, the study, the bedroom, and the lesser room, giving more areas to spread out and dodge enemies, although they may want to stick together now that the vicious, dangerous hunters are prowling about the building, what with their ability to slash and dash and potentially even instantly down someone. When it comes to weaponry, there's 4 options per type. That way, even if you have the same basic loadout, there's differences to make repeat playthroughs more fun. For simplicity's sake, all guns in the same type use the same ammo, even if that doesn't make total sense. Pistols have a Beretta, H&K, Browning, and STI Eagle. For shotguns, you have the Remington, the Riot Shotgun, Western Custom, and new to the franchise, the Double Barrel Shotgun, which has a pathetic ammo capacity, but high damage, especially if you set it to fire both barrels at once. You could even obliterate hunters with a single pull of the trigger. For assault guns, you have the M4A1, the MAC-11, the AKM, and Chicago Typewriter, without unlimited ammo. That's too busted. For rifles, you have the MR7, the Dragunov, and 2 new rifles, the Winchester, which is easily the fastest rifle, but has a small magazine and needs to be loaded 1 bullet at a time, and the Jackal, notable for being the strongest rifle, but since it's a bolt action, each shot requires an immediate reload, and it's very slow, though it does have some pretty good pierce potential. For magnums, there's the Colt Python, the Desert Eagle, the Broken Butterfly, and the Killer 7. There's grenade launchers, which include the M7N, the MGL, the Mine Launcher, and the Mine Thrower, which are different. The launcher fires pins that are embedded and then explode. The thrower fires pins that are embedded, wait until something is nearby, and then explode. So it's a difference between immediate gratification or setting and forgetting. Then there's the big category, which include weapons that all take up 2 slots, and unlike every other gun in the game, ammo for them only drops once you have the item in your inventory, and the ammo is not shared between the weapons. Those being the rocket launcher, spark shot, Gatling gun, and mini-me. The final gun category is special, entirely unique guns that don't quite fit into any other slot. These guns are the bowgun, flamethrower, Krauser's bow, and M-100P. There are also purchasable melee weapons, which are the large knife, the stun rod, the hatchet, the spear, the axe, and the rapier, each working slightly differently with different purposes for why you'd want to buy each one. The large knife is just an upgrade of the basic knife. The stun rod electrocutes enemies, which stuns them, though it doesn't really do much damage outside of that. The hatchet has low damage and is pretty slow, but it has a high chance to slice a limb off, completely crippling an enemy's ability to attack, or potentially killing them in one hit. The spear is very weak, but has an insane amount of range, meaning you can poke the undead from a safe distance. The axe is the slowest weapon in the game, but it deals the most damage, potentially one-shotting weaker enemies in a single hit. Finally, the rapier has an insane amount of crit damage, and swings incredibly quickly, but its normal damage is pretty pathetic. Each weapon, however, is useful in the right circumstances, and can be used to block or shove enemies back. However, only the basic knife, the large knife, and the hatchet can be used to instantly break free from a grapple. Although with the exception of the basic knife, those items are lost until the zombie is killed and the item is reclaimed. After a refight with Yawn, who smashes around throwing a major temper tantrum, they find a strange crank embedded in its skull. Recognizing it as something they needed in the courtyard, they grab it and return to the courtyard, crank the rank, and head underground. They head through the boulder passage, run through Black Tiger's room, then through the straight passage and into the second boulder passage, going up to the elevator to the fountain, and down into the laboratory. Through the lab entry, the ladder room, the stairway, then stopping in the O room and the morgue. Here they fight off everything from before, but now they have to deal with naked zombies. They're fast and dangerous, but not super durable. So a machine gun would tear through them, but let them get too numerous, and your run is fated to end. At this point in the run, teamwork is mandatory. Teammates can help each other out in a variety of ways, from simple stuff like throwing an enemy off their friend, sharing ammo, picking them up or healing them, to even things like working together to do special attacks on enemies, like bosses. Survival can only be obtained if everyone works together. Once the final wave is complete, they have to fight the menacing tyrant before it drops the battery they need to escape. Rushing back the way they came and making it to the emergency exit and helipad, they set off the flares, fighting off a wave of the undead as the rain begins to fall, the undead trying one last time to kill them, before the tyrant returns. Working together, the party kills the tyrant before all 4 of them get on Brad's helicopter and escape as the mansion spontaneously explodes. As the characters talk about what they're going to do with their life now that they've found a new lease on it, the campaign comes to a close, with the players being successful. And that was the Spencer Mansion episode. Now, why would you play it again? Well, for starters, to see any dialogue you may have missed, or to try for a higher rank. And you're especially gonna want to play again for the bonus content. Costumes are a must, both standard costumes and maybe even some wackier ones, like PS1 models, or making everyone look evil and suspicious, while making Wesker look like an average do-gooder cop. There could also be replayability in the difficulty. On easy, enemies deal less damage, are almost guaranteed to drop something on death, all instant downs are disabled, and the tyrant doesn't show up at the helipad. You just have to wait for Brad to get close enough. On hard, meanwhile, enemies have their entire moveset for the entire game, meaning you'll always have to deal with barfing zombies, and hunters can, the second they spawn in, instantly down someone. And harder enemies, like hunters or naked zombies, spawn earlier than you'd expect. And not only do you have to fight Black Tiger in her lair, meaning arachnophobes beware, but once you kill the tyrant on the roof, a second gold tyrant spawns, which has more health, more speed, and is way more likely to end your run. However, a saving grace is that on hard mode, all sources of money have a 2x multiplier, making it so you get more cash than on normal or easy, but there's also a brand new item, one for each character, the ink ribbon. Before the round starts, you can choose to use one of the party's ink ribbons to checkpoint yourselves, allowing you to restart at the beginning of the wave should everyone die. But be warned, each party member only gets one, with the bot's ink ribbons being spread as evenly as possible to the human players, so think wisely before you use it. But notice how I said Spencer Mansion episode? That's because this idea could so easily lead into more iterations of the same idea. There could be a Raccoon City episode, featuring Leon, Claire, Ada, and maybe Sherry. But if this is anything like the 1998 game, they won't let Sherry get near any enemies, so they don't have to animate child gore, and in that case we can go with Hunk instead. There, they could do battle against Lickers, make their way into the depths of Raccoon City, and do battle against this disgusting thing at the very end. They could also do a Nemesis episode, featuring Carlos, Mikhail, Nikolai, and Tyrell, as they attempt to find numerous escape routes out of Raccoon City, all the while being hunted by the monster that is Nemesis, chasing them throughout each transition level and making several appearances in the stationary ones. There could be a 0-hour episode, featuring Rebecca, Billy, Enrico, and Forrest battling on a train, before it crashes and they start fighting monkeys and leeches and all sorts of wacky things. Resident Evil 0 is weird. Or, you could also let the team create new original episodes, like an Undead Forest episode, featuring Kevin, Edward, Kenneth, and Richard in a what-if scenario following members of Bravo Team as they realize this place sucks and that a giant mansion probably won't be much better, so they decide to run back to the city, being an almost constant transition level. The team could get even more creative than that, like creating a super what-if Restless Dead episode, where Joseph Frost, Louis Serra, Marvin Branagh, and Murphy Seeker are trapped in the afterlife, and are given an opportunity to escape and get another chance at life, but to do so, they have to move through the hardest challenges the game can throw at the players, handcrafted to be nearly impossible for the crew to survive. I just hope that if this is created, it's done by fans, because I 100% am afraid that if Capcom makes this, all the fun cosmetics are going to be paid DLC or worse, a battle pass. And the base game will only include like one episode and everything else is like $10 DLC. That'd just be terrible. But that's all the yapping I have got to say. What are your thoughts on this idea? Was there any merit to it, or am I a big dumb stupid dumb idiot dumb stupid dumb who should learn to shut his mouth? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you nerds next time.